When we last left off, Germany had just elected Hitler chancellor. Now, as soon as Hitler became chancellor of Germany, he began to rearm the country. By March of 1935, Hitler had 2,500 war planes and an army of 300,000, in clear violation of the Versailles Treaty. Although Germany made no attempt to conceal the rearmament, no international response occurred, most likely because other countries were struggling to cope with the effects of the Great Depression. Even the League of Nations turned a blind eye to the situation. Everyone had bigger problems than Germany having a few soldiers. In March 1936, Hitler's troops retook the Rhineland. France, terrified at the prospect of fighting another world war, did nothing. Britain urged other nations to do whatever was necessary to avoid starting a full-scale armed conflict with Germany. This policy, known as appeasement, making concessions or failing to counteract an aggressor in order to avoid war, this appeasement guided Europe's reaction to Hitler's moves over the next 3 years. Since he faced no consequences from his Rhineland incursion, Hitler became bolder. He was not appeased, he wanted more. He had tested the waters and now realized he could get away with much more. In October 1936, Germany and Italy entered into a formal alliance known as the Rome-Berlin Axis. Less than a month later, Germany made a similar agreement with Japan. Collectively, these three nations, Italy, Germany, Japan, became known as the Axis powers. The picture on the right of this slide shows the representatives of each government that signed the Tripartite Pact. In 1931, Spain replaced its monarchy with a republican form of government. A struggle between left and right-wing political factions followed. After an unsuccessful military coup led by General Francisco Franco in July 1936, a civil war ensued. This is a civil war in Spain between fascists, Franco is a fascist, and then the communists, the socialists. The nationalists, led by Franco, these fascists, were supported by Hitler and Mussolini. Both Germany and Italy sent troops to help, tanks and bomber planes to aid Franco's fascist forces. Franco emerged victorious and became head of state. He then outlawed every political party except his own, the Phalange. Likewise, you have the fascist powers of the world, Italy and Germany, supporting Franco. The other side, the communist side of the Civil War, it was Stalin who would send aid. The Spanish Civil War provided Hitler with the unique opportunity to test out new weapons and military tactics. During the First World War, planes had been used for reconnaissance and fighter combat. During the Spanish Civil War, planes built by Heinkel aircraft were used by the Luftwaffe as bombers. Luftwaffe is the German Air Force. The Basques live in northern Spain and have their own culture, their own language and traditions distinct from the Spanish. They're their own people within Spain, northern Spain, very mountainous area. Hard to get to them. But on April 27th, 1937, German bombers dropped 100,000 pounds of high explosives and incendiary bombs on this village called Guernica, the cultural capital of the Basque people. Fighter planes used machine guns to mow down civilians. More than half the town was destroyed, and a third of its population was killed or wounded. Franco picked Guernica for this test of blanket bombing. in order to break the morale of the Basques, who did not support the nationalist cause. Hitler believed that all German-speaking peoples in Europe should be part of the new German Empire he planned to build. This is right out of Mein Kampf. All German-speaking peoples should be united under one leader. Many of these people lived in countries that bordered Germany, specifically Austria and the Sudetenland, that's the western part of Czechoslovakia. Hitler also felt that Germany was overcrowded and that the German people needed Lebensraum, or living space. Another part of the Mein Kampf book. He talked about Lebensraum when he was in prison before he became chancellor. He therefore planned to take by force Austria and Czechoslovakia. After being threatened with attack, Austrian Chancellor appointed Austrian Nazis to control the government. In March 1938, German troops took control of Austria, declaring it to be a part of the German Reich, an action known as the Anschluss. Again, Hitler faced no consequences from the international community for his actions. Hitler next set his sights on Czechoslovakia. His first demand was for the Sudetenland, an area bordering Germany where most people spoke German. Tensions ran high because Czechoslovakia was prepared to defend itself, and France had pledged to help it in case of attack. Mussolini suggested a meeting to avert war over Czechoslovakia. As noted, fear of war led many nations to follow a policy of appeasement. Just give him what he wants so we don't have to go to war. With this in mind, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, know that name, agreed to a meeting with Germany. Held in Munich, that's in Germany, in September 1938, just a year before World War II, the conference produced an agreement between Germany, Britain, Italy, and France that the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia would immediately be given to Germany, with promises that German aggression would come to an end. We'll give you what you want if you stop, basically. Upon returning to England, Chamberlain proclaimed that he had, quote, secured peace for our time. But just 6 months later, March 1939, Hitler invaded and took all the rest of Czechoslovakia. It was now more clear than ever that appeasement had failed. You're not going to satisfy this Hitler guy. Fearing that Hitler would next set his sights on Poland, because of the German speakers, Britain and France publicly promised to protect the country against Nazi aggression. In August 1939, the Soviet Union and Germany publicly agreed to a 10-year non-aggression pact. In addition to their public agreement never to attack one another, the two sides secretly negotiated a deal concerning Poland. Stalin in the Soviet Union would not act against Germany if it attacked Poland. Then Germany and the Soviet Union would divide Poland between them after the Germans seized the country. The stage was set for war. September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. The last straw, the beginning of the Western World War II, the invasion of Poland, September 1st, 1939. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Within a month, Germany had all of Poland under its control. The invasion reflected a new German military strategy called Blitzkrieg, which means lightning war, in which the Nazis used fast-moving planes and tanks for initial attacks, followed by a massive invasion of ground troops. So like lightning, they struck very quickly. Not many things are quicker than a plane. By mid-September, Stalin had sent troops to occupy the eastern half of Poland. Britain and France didn't have the military might to counterattack, even though they declared war. Hitler from the West. Instead, a British expeditionary force of 4 divisions was sent to help fortify France in September. From 1930 to 1934, France had constructed a series of linked, heavily armed fortifications along its border with Germany. Known as the Maginot Line, French generals believed this defense, the super trench, would keep the country safe from German attack. No military action occurred between fall 1939 and the spring of 1940 as the Allies waited for Hitler to make the next move. This time of waiting was called the Phony War. Although a state of war did exist, no fighting was really taking place. Then in April 1940, Hitler launched another surprise attack, this time on Denmark, called the Northern War. He attacks Denmark to the north, and Norway even further north, and Holland. German troops then moved through southern Belgium into France, bypassing the Maginot Line and splitting the British and French forces. So the super trench never came into play. The Nazis went right around through another country, and they never had to deal with this super trench the French built. The maneuver left the British troops trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, just across the channel from England. Though an extraordinary boat lift that involved both military and civilian craft, the British managed to rescue the troops from Dunkirk, but not their equipment. Here are your Google form questions.